Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, wherever you are, whatever time you've got. It's Views on the News.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? And as usual, I've scoured the world for the wise and the witty to be members of our panel. So we're starting with my regular co-host, Tersia. How the devil are you?
I'm here.
Good. That's good enough. Guy from Manchester. How the devil are you?
Hello. Yep. Good. Thanks.
Good. And a new boy, also from South Africa, Michael. How the devil are you?
The right way up.
Well, he's an old new boy. He's not a new boy, exactly.
Yeah.
And John, is this a first that we have two South Africans on the panel?
It might be. Yes, it might be. I've been trying to get Michael to join in for some time, but he's always busy. He's always got some other thing going, you know. He's got such an ebullient social life and business life. Anyway, we've got him tonight, so let's grab him. Okay.
John, I just have to, before we continue, I'm sorry, I just have to say that when you said Guy from Manchester, so Facebook has this, or iTunes, Apple has this way of reminding one of events. And 2 years ago, I was in Manchester. I stayed over, and Guy and Hanu and I spent a wonderful day in Manchester. And just this earlier, I think Thursday evening, I got this memory. We were in Manchester, Chinatown, and I was standing there by the Emmeline Pankhurst memorial. And I felt almost a physical sense
that's lovely.
it was lovely. It was so nice. I just, we had such a wonderful time with you guys. Thanks again for that.
Facebook memories, you got to like them. Yeah. And Manchester, of course, is a fantastic city. Anyway, the news. So it's been happening. The religious have been impacting us all week, as usual. Take, for example, Iran, which often features in our shows. They have a supreme leader who, of course, is the top dog. He's more important than their president and their prime minister. He's the one where the buck stops. And he has said, he's unusually, what's his name? Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's read the prayers on Friday. And you should have seen the crowd that he got in Tehran. It was huge. So, but he said that Iran's enemy is one. He's wrapped us all up against Iran. He's also said that the October the 7th invasion of Israel was justified, and he called for solidarity of the Muslim world because God will grant us mercy. I'm quoting him. So he said that Iran's missile strikes on Israel, recently happened, of course, were correct, logical, and lawful. And what had prompted this was Israel's astonishing crimes, because, of course, they managed to kill Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. So, during his sermon, Khamenei praised Nasrallah and voiced support for Hamas and Hezbollah, which, of course, are puppets of Iran, which he said provided vital service to the entire region and the entire Islamic world. He said, Iran-aligned armed groups will not back down in their conflict with Israel. Are we entering World War III?
Well, it's getting very scary, the escalation of this conflict, and we've heard repeated and urgent calls for a ceasefire and negotiations. We know that that's the only way it can ever be settled. So I associate myself with that call and say, please do it now rather than after another few years of terrible violence, death, and destruction.
Yeah.
Seems so obvious looking at it from the outside.
Yeah.
Can I, Michael? Sorry, I'll give you time. It's interesting how things happen. Just before we came onto the show, I was watching a new YouTuber that I've discovered called Johnny Harris, and I watched a program that he did on the origins of the CIA. And please give me time to explain where I'm coming from. We don't have big enough scope to see that everything we do has an effect. We control nothing, but we influence everything. And the trouble is that, why do I come from the CIA? So the CIA was instrumental in overthrowing the legitimately elected government of Iran, who overthrew the Shah.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't happened, there's no way of knowing how different Iran would have been if the CIA didn't support the Shah when they did. And that leads me, how religion feeds into this is that religious people, when you are religious, and I was religious for the most part of my life, I was religious. You with religion comes a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
You are absolutely convinced that what you are doing is the right thing because God speaks it into whatever. And what America has been doing in the past 50, 60 years, since the Second World War, has been to a great extent based on this idea that America is the city on a hill, and albeit never officially so, but there's always been this idea that that God ordained America to be whatever it is, and now we sit in a situation where so many of the most powerful people in the world, be they Joe Biden, be they Benjamin Netanyahu, they all have a sense of entitlement that they don't have any reason to have, be they the leader of Iran, in saying that what we are doing is right because we are entitled by our supreme creator, God of the universe.
Good point.
And I think that needs to be spoken out loud.
It's self-righteousness, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's shocking. Straightforwardly, Donald Trump is without a question a con man, probably the greatest con man that's ever lived. And he has managed to suck in a cult around him of religious fanatics, primarily religious fanatics. And it's quite terrifying, the world that we've been delivered into, the next month or two, what with Israel, with Ukraine and American elections. I shudder to think where we're going.
Fortunately, my crystal ball is broken, so I can't make any predictions.
No. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen Bill Maher's brilliant documentary Religulous. It's the final scene. I just want to recall when he stood at Megiddo, where this final battle is supposed to happen, and these were the final words, if I may read. Having just said that I read with like a 3rd grader, he said, "If you belong to a political party or a social club that was tied to as much bigotry, misogyny, and homophobia, violence, and sheer ignorance as religion is, you'd resign in protest. To do otherwise would be to be an enabler, a mafia wife. With the true devils of extremism that draw the legitimacy from the billions of their fellow travelers, if the world does come to an end here or wherever, or if it limps into the future, decimated by the effects of a religiously inspired nuclear terrorism. Let's remember the real problem was that we learned how to precipitate mass death before we got past the neurological disorder of wishing for it.
Yes.
If those are not among the most powerful words I've ever read,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
on the subject of wishing to impose your personal chosen doctrine onto others, take a look at this.
It should not be fragranced or perfumed.
A woman, she's not allowed to put perfume on if she leaves the house. The Prophet, he told us in a hadith, any woman who leaves the house and she places perfume on herself, the Prophet, he said that she's a zaniya. She's a fornicator. So it's very dangerous that you place perfume on yourself and you leave the house. Be careful. That does not mean that you have to smell bad. It doesn't mean that. But it doesn't mean you have to smell or place on yourself perfume. Now,
It should not resemble the clothing of men.
also it shouldn't resemble clothing that men wear, for example.
Who does he think he is?
But the poor women that are under this idiot's power.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, my thought was, he says, if they're wearing perfume, that means they're a fornicator. And I thought, is this the standard of evidence in this religion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything of the sort.
Yeah. Do you know?
And, no, go ahead, John.
Thank you. Yeah, I heard a great joke, and I'm going to spoil it by mistelling it probably, but it's about this father who he's trying to explain the difference between reality and between no, I'm going to spoil it.
In theory and in theory and in practice.
Thank you. Theory and practice. Well done. Yes. Have you seen this? Have you seen this joke? Because I did send it around a bit. Yes.
I'm familiar with it.
So he's trying to explain to his son the difference between theory and practice, and so he suggests that the son should go to his mother and ask her whether she would be prepared to sleep with a plumber for £1 million, dollars, whatever. And so the son trots off and comes back and says the mother would, yes, she would do that for £1 million. And then he says, well, go and talk to your sister and ask her whether she would be prepared to sleep with a plumber for $1 million or pounds. So off the little boy goes and comes back and says, yes, my sister would do that. So that the father then says, well, in theory, we're sitting on £2 million. But in practice, we're living with a couple of slappers.
Don't get me started on jokes, please.
Who's paying?
On a more serious note, although maybe sometimes the best thing is to just tell jokes and laugh about the absurdity of this all. But I think I mentioned it in one of our previous episodes as well. I would really very much like, and maybe we must find somebody like that, John, to interview on Free Thought Hour. I know a few Muslim women in my area. I would like to have a conversation with a devout Muslim woman to find out what they think about this idea that a woman shouldn't wear perfume when she goes outside because that makes her a fornicator. Because I'm not making what the imam or whoever it was that you played to us just now, what he said is just unacceptable and absurd and terrible. But I think we should be careful to just think it's just men. There are women who seriously share those beliefs and who inculcate those beliefs in their sons and in their daughters. And those are the people that I would like to talk to. Because I can understand a man who is in a position of power saying things like that. I can understand, sort of intellectually, I can understand that. But what I cannot understand is a woman
Going along
adhering to those same principles.
yes.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. It takes two to
It's got to be
tango.
more than that too. There has to be more than that to it, Michael. There is some. It's a real thing, but I would really very much like to get to the bottom of that.
I think you need to do it incognito, because I think, you know, she's operating under duress. If her face is to be shown within her community, she can't do it.
Well,
Simply can't do it.
that's the thing I'm not sure about. I'm not sure that all women are operating under duress. I think it's more complex than that.
I think you need a psychologist to
Yes.
verify it. Yeah.
That's the type of psychology that I'd like to dig into.
We will definitely try and get some people on that subject onto our show. It's a good idea. Yeah. So moving on, Pakistan. Zakir Naik he's some sort of, I don't know whether he's a sort of Pope equivalent, but he's big.
No, he's a big preacher, isn't he? And some people call him a scholar, but really he's not a scholar. He's just a preacher.
He's an ignoramus, in my view.
He is, yeah.
Anyway, he was in an orphanage, and the little orphan girls were called on the stage to receive a prize. It was in the form of a shield. But he was supposed to deliver this. He was supposed to present this prize. But he left the stage without giving it to anyone. Watch this video. I think I've got this here for you.
Sounds like Mike Pence.
Yeah, very much so, yes. Take a look.
There's a commonality.
So it's embarrassing. He was obviously there as the authority.
Marshal ceremony. No.
The guest of honor.
Yes, that's right. And then he sods off just before he's supposed to hand it. And you can see the host is there wandering around trying to get him to come back. And I've got the shield. Come and give it. But the reason he did that is because these little girls are of marriageable age, and Muslim men shouldn't be associating with them. That's why he wasn't prepared to hand over the prize.
Well, I mean, it's just another nail in the coffin. It's completely consistent with his, medieval or primitive views about women.
What a burden! What a burden for him and all of them.
Yeah.
Self-imposed. Hitch called it mind-forged manacles.
That's a good phrase. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Zakir Naik has come up with some really amazing ones in the past. I mean, he was the ones who say that men's penises point to heaven because they're anxious to meet the virgins that they're going to get.
Right, well, he's obviously 20.
Last time we had a discussion about how to recognize a circumcised penis, which I wouldn't be able to do. But one thing I can say is I don't see penises pointing to heaven all that often.
So different demographic.
Right, perhaps we ought to move on, but I'm sorry for lowering the tone there. But I mean, this is the kind of idiot he is,
Lowering the aim, more like.
Yes.
points more to hell these days, I'm afraid.
Well,
But the trouble is that Zakir Naik is very famous, and he gets thousands coming to his sermons. And he takes questions, and that's comical because sometimes he gets really good questions, but he bats them off with some.
But I had a moment of lucidity this week. I was at the gym and I ended up sitting in the sauna and chatting to a Muslim guy, and he was there was a Jewish man in there and myself. I didn't declare myself, and they were chatting. And obviously he was formerly Islamic, and he was reminiscing how he had to learn by rote the Quran. And he said, he can't even remember very much of it anymore. And he every now and then he reads it. So he's sort of a lapsed Muslim, if you will. But he related something quite sort of shocking and sickening, where he said that they would, and he told it in some graphic detail, which was disturbing, how they every day would have to learn 5 pages in Arabic by rote, and next day come in and repeat it. And it was with intonation and everything else. And if you got something wrong, they beat the crap out of them. Now, if from a child you wasting your brain power on that nonsense, and repeating it, of course you're going to be messed up as an adult. How can you not?
And never understanding it because they don't. It's just
teach them Arabic.
It's by rote.
Yes,
parrot.
Yeah.
So if I may, just on that note, I'm sure you've a lot to get through, but I point out, that Islam has got 1.6 million adherents. Judaism's got about 16 million, so it's about a ratio of about 1 to 100. And if you look at the what's his name, and I can't believe the word jumped out of my mind, and it always does, who invented dynamite, his name is
Nobel.
Nobel. If you look at the Nobel, it's one of those words I cannot remember. Nobel Prize. If you look at the Nobel Prizes, I think in all of Islam, all of 1.6 billion people, I think they've won 2, and they were for humanities.
Yes.
And Judaism's won like a third of all Nobel Prizes, which is hundreds. So you've got to now make a decision between these people. You've got to either make the racist proclamation that Islamic people, it's not really racist because it's not a race, but the Islamic people are fundamentally lower IQ, that they didn't attain, or there's something wrong in the culture that's holding them back. Now, I'd prefer and believe that they're capable of doing it, but they don't. So they're actually letting humanity down because they otherwise engaged. They engaged in trying to remember 5 pages a day and getting beaten for it. It's
I just want to add something, and I'm just dropping this here. Has any practicing Orthodox Jew ever won a Nobel Prize for anything? Because
Probably
to be
fair
ethnically Jewish,
fair enough.
Yeah, good point.
I just want to drop that. That would be interesting.
There's a lot of secular Jews, aren't there?
Exactly.
They're the ones that are high achievers.
They're culturally Jewish, but they don't actually believe there's a man in the sky watching them. Yeah.
So leaving the Jews out of this from now on, the Roman Catholics. Pope Francis. He's been sharply criticized by one of Belgium's Catholic universities over his stance on the role of women in society. So he appeared at the University of Louvain, and he made a speech, and the students and lecturers wanted to express their incomprehension and disapproval about his speech immediately afterwards. So they wrote a letter, which has been covered a lot, saying that, hello, David, welcome.
Hello.
Saying,
Oh, hi, David.
Hey.
Yeah, you're a bit late, but never mind. So
My apologies.
don't worry, you're always welcome.
Thank you.
So the University of Louvain deplores the conservative positions expressed by Pope Francis on the role of women in society. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm told that the Pope's actually bathed with underwear on. I don't know if you know that, because they don't want to look down. They don't want to look down on the unemployed. So
Oh,
what would he know about women? They've been.
I think the Pope is probably shocked that women are in society just in general.
Yes.
I mean, it does make the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope a laughing stock in the eyes of most of the world, except those who actually believe in this rubbish.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very sad that. The good thing is that university felt it had sufficient independence to be able to make this comment, because that's relative. That's the new and interesting part.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, their letter was read out loud to him, because this was in some interview that he featured in, and they questioned him on the church's historical part in entrenching female subservience, the unfair division of labor, and even disproportionate female poverty. So they gave it to him strong. His response was unbelievable. He said, the church is female, because the Italian word for it, chiesa, is a feminine noun.
It's the bride of God. I'm the bride of Christ. Fuck.
Yeah. I mean, that really is an incredibly weak argument.
Yeah.
Well, but at least they didn't want to behead anybody over it, which is
A step in the right direction, is that?
And at least he didn't say that women shouldn't even wear perfume when they leave the house.
Right.
But while we're juxtaposing the various Abrahamic religions, there is something strange about the teenagehood in centuries of these. When Judaism was a teenager, they were sort of 1,300 years old. They were thoroughly nasty, and then Christianity we set the clock at zero, and by the time we got to the 1300s, we were burning people in the street. We were nasty. And now Islam is a bloody teenager with all the teenage problems again, completely antisocial. There's something about it.
There you go. So what do you got to say about that, David? You're the anthropologist here.
I'd say Mike is making a very good point in linking the three faiths, the Abrahamic traditions, because there's a lot of tradition here, and on occasion, some of it is good, but for the most part, it certainly, I believe at least, is dysfunctional and antithetical to humanism and the civilization of our society.
Yeah.
So I have a bias, even though I'm an anthropologist, but I only base it on what we've seen. For some people, the good old days is burning witches at the stake.
Yeah.
Today in the 21st century, there are people who long for that, and it's still happening. If you go look what Leo Igwe was saying about, they're burning people in Africa in certain places because they have a hump, so, there's still magic, if you're using incantation, if you are trying to do exorcisms, it's magic. If you're seeing people are possessed, this is the 21st century. There's no room for this. But for those who hold dearly to their faith, it's just Sunday or Tuesday or whatever.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Leo, because I understand this may not be publicly known yet, but Mubarak Bara, who has been imprisoned in northern Nigeria, is now free.
Oh, really? Oh, that's brilliant.
Wow.
That's great news.
Yes.
Yeah. Is he going to stay in Nigeria, or is he?
I don't know. He's still in a closet. He's not. That may not be public news, but I don't think our audience is big enough to cause him any harm. So I discovered this week that we've got a sort of kindred channel called Religion News Service, which tries to do a similar sort of thing to my Global Atheist News show, but it's very much more American biased, and it's got fewer subscribers than Free Thought.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Free Thought Productions channel has. Anyway, here's a video from them, because I think we should cooperate. I think we should work together. Take a look at this.
When there's polarization, people stop listening to one another. They go into their silos and they get angry and hateful.
I think that opinion can get ahead of truth, that clicks can get ahead of depth of coverage.
Literally, we're seeing riots happening because of misinformation.
RNS helps people understand what the real deal is, explains it, helps people understand people they may think they disagree with, and sometimes find out they actually have some things in common.
These are the stories that other news organizations don't as often cover.
You can look through the stories of RNS and you can see a country unfolding.
We need understanding.
And I know that as we become a more pluralistic society, the reporting of RNS will be more important than ever.
Do you think I should reach out to Religion News Service and see if we can work together?
They look very professional, gee.
Yeah, they're good at videos. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, any collaboration is worth a try, in my opinion. I mean, I'm in theory or in practice, £2 million or whatever, give it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that polarization point, of course, is absolutely true. You were talking about it last week at Northern Atheists, weren't you?
I was, yes. You kindly invited me to guest for your branch monthly event, which you can now see on the Atheism UK channel.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. They're talking, about information. I don't know if you've seen Noah Harari, Yuval Noah Harari's latest book on information. It looks very interesting. I haven't read it yet. I've just seen his videos on it, and he's just talking about.
I'm busy working, Mike. I'm busy working through it, and it just takes forever because my husband bought me the book,
yes,
which is wonderful. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But what I do find is I'm so used to reading ebooks, and it's so much easier to make notes when you're doing an ebook. So I end up sitting with a book on my lap and making notes on my tablet, which means I read really slowly. But it's so dense and so well written. I was actually, John and I, we need to talk about that book. We need to do a show about that book.
Because information technology and the socioeconomic and political environment we find ourselves in is the direct result of the internet and now artificial intelligence, which is open-ended. Who knows?
We've got to accept a new globalism. I was trying out globality, but it didn't sound right. Globalism, because it's not just trading across the high seas anymore, is it? It's this. It's instant communication across continents, like we're doing now. We're very international. We now have England, Australia, South Africa, and America on one screen. Australia is a bit different, a bit difficult because it's tomorrow morning where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes things harder for us because the world is round.
It is. Well,
just on that note, one of my students is a flat earther, and I've had numerous conversations with him about it, and I've been digging into this notion of flat Earth, and that it ties very neatly into this whole thing about information. The latest statistics is that people of people under 30, 40%. Listen to this: 40% of people under the age of 30 are not convinced that the Earth is round.
Really?
In America, is this or where?
Well, yes, I think this is American. I suppose it's American statistics. I'll have to dig into the source. But the reason that that's given, and that makes a lot of sense to me, is that many people have a distrust of information, which is not altogether unfounded. But to find that balance of what information to trust is quite a tricky business. And when I I'll send you the link. I'll send all of you the link. It was one of Johnny Harris's YouTube, the investigative journalist. He did a whole thing about not so much is the Earth flat, because as he says, it's not. You don't need to talk about whether the Earth is flat or round. I mean, but he dug into why there is an increasing number of people, especially in a particular demographic, who is not convinced that the Earth is round, and it boils down to: do you trust information, and what information do you trust? And that is something that we need to talk about more as secular humanists, I think.
Big time. Well, the flat Earth thing has gone global.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense at all, but it's true. Yes.
It's gone dish wide.
Yes.
It is staggering.
Yes.
And next we'll have to deal with heliocentricity.
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake. Don't give them ideas, please.
Yeah. But anyway, we're running out of time here, so I just want to show you that Melania Trump doesn't agree with her husband. Take a look at this.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
Well, she's promoting a book, of course.
Right. Yeah, the consensus in the U.S. is that this is just another grift, and that she's saying what she's saying to sell books. You know? So that's it. I mean, that's the size of it. Because I heard some commentary not that long ago that when Trump was elected to the office of president, everyone was feeling, oh, poor Melania, she must be trapped in that White House. And then the reports are that basically, she's sort of agrees with Trump on pretty much everything, and that it's all just, a sham. So, I at first when I heard this, I thought, oh, well, that's good. I mean, at least here's someone of relatively high status coming out this way. But then I realized, no, it's probably, whether she believes it or not is almost moot, because it's really about selling books.
There's an ulterior motive.
Melania Trump is the ultimate mob wife.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think he doesn't really have an opinion either. His opinion is he just wants more power, and whatever he'll say, whatever thinks will get him more power. I don't think he's got a stance.
I disagree with you in the respect, Mike. I think he absolutely has an opinion. I think he has authorized and pressed many women to have abortions done. I think he has absolutely no problem with abortion.
He's paid for at least 4.
At least. So he definitely has an opinion, and his opinion is, bloody, I'll get rid of it if it interferes with my plans. But he will never say that what he really thinks. He will only say what he thinks will gain him more power.
Yeah.
Well, he's the less I say about him, the better. I think he's probably afraid of post birth abortions because he's not beyond being aborted. I think they probably threw the baby away and brought up the afterbirth in my And then everybody leaps on me and says, "Are you a Democrat?" No, I'm not a Democrat. I'm just a person who doesn't like criminals. It's
Yes.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, as I said, but I want to finish on 3 high notes, because this guy, who is the hate preacher, name of Stephen Anderson, his children have now come out as victims of abuse from his own the way he brought them up. So that's
a surprise.
Yeah, I know. Yes. So there's that. But there's also a piece of good news from New Zealand, because they've done a survey, and the proportion of people with no religion has increased from 48.2% of the population in 2018 to 51.6% of the population in 2023.
Okay.
That's the right direction, isn't it? And the UK has also now got more atheists than people who believe in God, because new research has shown that the UK is entering its first atheist age.
Wow.
Huh. Well done.
What a way to
just to be a little bit on your parade, David, John. I was listening to a podcast with Alex O'Connor and the host of Religion for Breakfast, and they spoke about that whole thing about statistics, and I think I've mentioned it before on this very show, that's wonderful news, great for Britain, great for New Zealand, except that none of those non-believers are rugby players, it seems, because every single New Zealand team that wins thanks the Lord for whatever tries they score. But the law didn't step in when they played against South Africa. I just want to say that. The law was obviously still on South Africa's side when it comes to rugby. But guess what is happening in China? Christianity is the fastest growing religion in China. How optimistic is that? And that can change what the world looks like very, very rapidly. So good for UK, good for New Zealand.
Well, thank you for raining on our parade.
Yes.
I warned you. I'm so sorry.
I was going to come up with more rain, but I won't now.
Please don't. Yeah. So thank you very much, you guys. You've been wonderful. And
can I just say that 100% of the people on this program are probably atheists.
Yeah. I think you're on a way.
That's a good statistic. That's a statistic you can trust.
Yes, it is. Yes.
It's also a very cautious sort of academic statement, you know.
Yes, I try.
Yeah. So that's a much better note to leave us on.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And thank you for viewers, especially those in future who will watch our podcast.
Thank you.
Say bye-bye.
A lot of fun. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?